Yes, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. Or, of course, if you're watching on our growing YouTube channel, that is Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me from the Mohegan Sun Arena in Connecticut, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And Andrew, just on that very court, I guess to your right, I'm trying to account for the reversal on us right now.
I'm in line with the free throw line. Like right behind me is the free throw line on the basket that was in front of Carolina's bench.
I'm having to
the media stuff's on the other side, but I had to find a spot where I could do this and get, the arena in the background and this little halo over here.
Yeah, walk a mile around
kind of making me look special. I wanted to show off the fact that I haven't shaven in a week.
Exactly, man. I'm digging it. I'm digging it personally, but
I got the growth look.
Yeah, I'm digging it, man. Carolina losing 89-72 to number 17 ranked Tennessee in the Hall of Fame tip-off. We got to start on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer in my opinion. It's something we've hit on, I think, pretty much after every game in some respect in these three things videos we've done so far this season, 5 games in. But Tennessee with outscored Carolina 19-5 in fast break points, shot 54.3% on the night, over 60% in the second half. Transition defense continues to be a big issue as well. Even going back a little bit further, y'all know, I'll let you dive into some stats too, but Purdue shot over 60% in the second half as well yesterday. So defensively, Carolina just continues to struggle. I tweeted it at one point during the game where it just felt like Tennessee can kind of do whatever they want to get to the basket and score. That for me, transition defense and just guarding guys off the dribble has kind of been Carolina's biggest issue, in my opinion, for what I've seen of the past couple of days in particular. It has to improve. Carolina defensively has just been, flat out bad. I think it's safe to say that. And I think that really culminated in what was a 17-point loss for the Tar Heels against a okay Tennessee team, not a great Tennessee team. I think it's a good Tennessee team, but nowhere near the level of a team like Purdue, in my opinion.
It's an NCAA tournament team, but they're probably like an 8, 9, 10 seed type team.
Yeah.
And Rick Barnes is a really good coach to get better, but this isn't about them. It's about Carolina. And I don't think it's unfair to say that Carolina has been bad defensively this season. And, I was talking to some people before the game during warm-ups down on the side of the court, somebody in the media whom I respect a lot. I'm not going to name them, but our take was, okay, Hubert has a different vision of how defense should be played. He wants to switch. They want to fight through screens. And we've talked about that where at times they've gotten some really bad matchup issues because of switches. But the belief was he probably envisions that by January or February, this will be a very good defensive team. And he said in the post game today, we're going to be a great defensive team. But 5 games in, it's kind of hard to imagine, especially this weekend, and really especially the last 3 halves, going back to second half against Purdue. It's hard to imagine a team playing poorer on defense than Carolina has. They gave up just open shot after open shot. And here's the crazy thing. The last 3 opponents have hit 9 threes each. But today, Tennessee had 9 threes, but they were also 21 of 25 or 26 on layups. Mm-hmm. They get layups and they get threes. And they're getting what they wanted.
Yeah, essentially.
And they're getting stuff in the open court. The last 3 opponents each have had 19 fast break points. The last 3 opponents have averaged 16.7 points off Carolina turnovers. So when the Tar Heels are turning it over, they're doing it in the middle of the court, and it's leading to runouts. When they're missing shots, because today they only had 5 offensive rebounds on 33 missed shots, which is a very, very poor percentage, that's leading to runouts. Gosh, I mean, there's so much to pick at here. Tennessee had 28 assists on 38 baskets. The numbers, I don't need to give perspective here. The numbers do that for you.
Yeah, they speak for themselves, really.
This was a really bad defensive performance. And Hubert's we talked to Hubert, Brady Manick, and Armando after the game. You can see the presser up on our site. And Armando said, well, we got to play harder. We weren't really ready to play and all that. And they didn't look ready to play from the get-go. They looked lethargic. They looked like they had heavy legs early. They weren't getting good looks. RJ kind of went back into last year mode for a while. Caleb did the same thing. In fact, quite honestly, they looked like last year's team when they weren't playing well. And some of us in the media were occasionally glancing down at Roy on the sideline, sitting with his wife. And, Roy last year would kind of lean forward and do the exasperation body movement. And he did that a few times tonight, and he wasn't coaching the team. So there was a lot of stuff to pick at, and we can pick at it. And my 5 takeaways are probably going to be 1,700 words because there's a lot of stuff you just can't leave out. And it's not that we're picking on the team, but it's our job to articulate what they did not do well. And other than Brady Manick hitting 6 of 10 from 3-point range, and Armando had a couple of nice stretches offensively, there really wasn't anything this team did well today. And when you think about the weekend, all that grit and fight we talked about yesterday against Purdue and that whole no moral victory thing, they played today like they earned a win yesterday and they could coast. And I'm not saying that that's what their mentality was, but they learned a lesson. You got to strap it up every day. And, Hubert told us back in April in his introductory press conference, my team will show up to play every night. Well, they did not look ready to play. And Armando said they weren't ready to play. And Hubert said afterward, I actually asked him late in the presser, Coach, you haven't had a chance to kind of fully absorb what happened this weekend, but off the top of your head right now, what is one thing that stands out that must change, must be fixed? And he said, I shouldn't have to coach effort. So if your take and the narrative is they weren't ready to play, they never got ready to play, and the results show in the statistics and what our eyes saw, you wouldn't be wrong because that's what they're saying.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think that was pretty evident. I mean, I saw a lot of chat about it on Twitter, people complaining about effort. I mean, you could kind of notice it from really early on in that game. It just didn't seem like Carolina was ever really into it too much. And like I said, I know they've had some nice stretches where they cut it close at particular times, but overall, a 17-point loss is a 17-point loss, and particularly down the stretch towards the end.
But did you or anybody watching this, and when people who are on our site, if they want to comment underneath there, as soon as the second half started, when Tennessee just hit and shot after shot, I think they ate of their first 9 or something. They were 14-16 in one stretch going back to the end of the first half. Did you ever think Carolina had the juice to get back in it and win this game?
No,
I never did.
No,
I didn't see that. And I didn't think Tennessee had great juice early either. But when you make shots, you start feeling pretty good about stuff. As Roy used to always say, when the ball goes through the rim, it makes everything look better. But it also makes you feel better. And I think Tennessee just started saying, hey, man, this is our game. And at one point, somebody in the media kind of joked that Tennessee hit a 3 to go up, I think, 17 with about 7 minutes left. He said, boy, they're just showing off.
Yeah, that's what it kind of felt like.
And it wasn't a criticism of Tennessee. It was more just a generalized statement that that's what it appears like because they can.
Most definitely. Yeah. Let's move on to the second thing I want to hit on. Let's talk about the glass. Kind of Carolina struggles rebounding the ball today, out rebounded 39-30 on the night. Tennessee just dominated down low, really 54-22 in terms of points in the paint and Tennessee's advantage. So that was a theme for Carolina this weekend in terms of being dominated in terms of points in the paint. Struggled with that against Purdue as well. So, I mean, it's usually a strength of these Carolina team going back to the Roy Williams area. I mean, I know they have out-rebounded some teams. They should, don't get me wrong. They have had some really good nights on the glass. But tonight and against Purdue in particular were two nights that, I think Carolina would like to have back down low because they just haven't been able to really get much going in terms of stopping teams down there. But obviously, like I said, grabbing boards too.
Through 5 games, I would say yesterday is the only time that this team has exceeded where they should be, or matched or exceeded where they should be on the glass. They were plus 10 or so against Loyola, Brown, Charleston, and they should be much higher than that. If you go back and look at past years, they're 15 to 25 plus against teams like that.
Oh, yeah,
and they weren't doing that. And today they're down, they're -8 on the glass. They had 5 offensive rebounds and 33 missed shots. That's an awful percentage. So they have not been as good a rebounding team as typically Carolina has in the past. Again, this is 5 games in, but 5 games is a 1/6 of the season. Plus we had the exhibition game. So this is a healthy sample size to at least identify some of the areas that haven't been up to snuff. I think they have collectively been a little bit better offensively than some of us may have expected. But then again, it's where they're getting their offense. They scored 40 points in the paint this week. When you're scoring from further and further away from the basket, it reduces the chances that you're going to put the ball through the cylinder on a fairly consistent basis. The reason Roy Williams ran stuff through the post throughout his entire Hall of Fame career was because the closer you shoot to the basket, the higher percentage the shots are, the more you're going to make. And how many times did we see other teams hit 12 threes against Carolina, but they're scoring twos on a regular basis? And when you're constantly scoring, mentally it wears on another team. You're putting stress on the other team to score baskets. Well, so what was going to happen when the ball didn't go through the cylinder for Carolina, like we saw tonight? Well, when that happens, then everything blows up if you're not getting stopped. So 40 points in the paint in 2 games. You want to be a little bit more inside oriented. Their best player is Armando Bacot. His bread and butter is get the ball on the block and score on guys. And they went to him early in the second half and then just disappeared with that. So they have to run stuff through the post. And when you do that, it just makes everything else flow better. It looked to me like a lot tonight. On the glass, they weren't what they should be. Offensively, kind of looking around like, okay, well, when you want to just run spread and the mindset is spread, it's going to affect the consistency of quality of shots sometimes, especially when the team that's defending fairly well on the perimeter. Tennessee, they were doubling on RJ. They were putting him into constant dribble mode. They were keeping Caleb from getting good looks. It was interesting that RJ was on the ball as much as he was. Caleb and Kennedy Chandler were 2 of the top point guards in the country 2 years ago. And it would have been interesting to see that matchup. And Kennedy's, a fantastic player. I think a lot of people were looking to see what Caleb would do in that, especially since Hubert said a couple of weeks ago that he thinks Caleb can lead the ACC in assists. But if you're not on the ball, you're not going to get a ton of assists, especially when you're not getting the ball from the spot that he was. So I know I'm kind of going around about a lot of different stuff, but that's kind of what stood out to me, Jacob. They weren't Carolina on the glass, and they haven't really been except Saturday. And what we started seeing offensively, they kind of weren't as much that today because other than Brady, guys weren't hitting. And Armando hit some stuff inside, like I said, and Brady looked like he was ill. He was constantly stretching during dead balls. When you're sick and you get tight, you get chills and aches, you're constantly trying to stretch that. That looked like I'm just saying. I'm not saying that was the case. I'm just saying he was stretching a lot, and he kind of had body language like he wasn't feeling well. And Hubert didn't say that the guys were not feeling well, that the leaky illness of Saturday, affected other guys today.
Carried over or anything like that, yeah.
Yeah, so, in this second point, you bring up rebounding, but when it's 54-22 in the paint and you lose the rebounding edge by 8 and you only grab 5 of your 33 missed shots and there's not a lot of boxing out going on, these are somewhat correctable things because having the juice to go after the ball and boxing out and kind of enforcing a little bit more of your will, those are things that can be fixed. It's not a talent thing. It's just a whole what on earth were you doing kind of thing.
Yeah, most definitely. Just it did look like as a whole Carolina was kind of fatigued today, and that's not an excuse. They shouldn't have been.
Hubert was asked about that, Jacob. He's like, these guys are 18, 19, 20 years old.
Yeah, that's exactly.
They all want to play in the NBA, and in the NBA, you have about 15 back-to-back nights a year.
Yeah.
So, that's not – they just didn't play well. They didn't have great focus. They didn't have great juice. They didn't have the kind of grit and fight that we saw against Purdue, and they paid for it. They paid for it in an ugly way.
Yeah, most definitely. Last thing I want to hit on, AJ, as we kind of always do, let's talk about kind of what this means, what's coming next. I know Carolina, obviously, best 2 opponents they've played this season, back-to-back games, Purdue and Tennessee, losing those games in the end pretty easily. I know it was a little bit closer against Purdue, but still. Obviously, UNC Asheville at home on Tuesday before they got a week off for the Michigan game. So, they do have a little bit of time off coming up. Obviously, a quick turnaround. You expect them to beat Asheville at home. But for you, AJ, from what did you kind of learn this weekend going into, I said a few tough games in the non-conference? What are your takeaways from Carolina's 2 losses this weekend?
Well, I'm a big fan of connecting stuff and looking for trends because trends ultimately reveal who you are. And we're way too early in the season to know who this team is. Way too early. And Hubert made a point of that as well. It's November 21st. So there's
still early.
Still early, yeah. Look, we've seen really good Carolina teams look bad at times. We've seen really good Carolina teams just not show up in a sense. And you learn from it. It's a great thing to happen on November 21st because you got a lot of time coming up after Asheville. You got more than a week before you play again, but you got Michigan. I think what today is, and I may go several different places here with this. Number one, this was a real big missed opportunity. Carolina has 4 games, 4 in the non-conference, that are games that could help their NCAA resume. They've dropped 2. The other 2 they have is Michigan coming up at home, and then UCLA in Las Vegas. Now, the club I saw this weekend would have a very difficult time winning either one of those games. If they thought Purdue was good inside, wait till they deal with Hunter Dickinson from Michigan. If they have a tough time defending guys who can find players and defending dudes who can put the ball on the floor and create a bunch of different ways, like Johnny Juzang from UCLA, they're going to have a lot of trouble there too. So they put themselves in a difficult spot where they must win one of those games to build something on their resume. Because you don't want to have to go into league play not having a lot of confidence because you haven't really picked up a great win yet, and also having to build your resume. And some people will say, gosh, it's way too early to talk about resume stuff. Not when you don't have a lot of opportunities. Furman had a good win earlier at Louisville, but I don't think Furman's going to help your resume. There's a chance that Appalachian State could win a lot of games in the Sun Belt and be a top 100 team, which can help their resume a little bit, but you don't want to have to rely on that. Beating Tennessee today would have given them one of those games that they need. I'm telling you guys, when people say, November basketball doesn't mean that much, when you get to March and you start combing over resumes, you look back at those, oh my goodness, boy, if they would have had that one, what a difference that would make. And I'm not talking about just getting this team into the tournament. I'm just talking about what their positioning is, where their seeding is, and just the confidence of winning a game like this. The reality is this, Jacob. They trailed Brown late at home. They were down 11 at Charleston. For all their might yesterday, they still lost, and Purdue was clearly the better team. And then today they were terrible. This game was 20 at one point and ended up 17 points. So 5 games, and they were underwhelming, especially now looking back against Loyola. So 5 games in, there's not a whole lot. If you only look at that and say there's not a whole lot to look to there's not a lot that you can use to project forward. Boy, this team's going to be fantastic moving forward. I think they have a chance to be really good. And I think the struggles that they're going through right now will help them. But it begins with Hubert. Hubert has to recognize these things, and I'm sure that he does. He's got to communicate a certain way. He's not Roy. He's Hubert. He's told us many times, I'm Hubert. I'm going to do things the way I do things. Well, now we get an opportunity to see how he handles something like this. And, how they come out against Asheville will be important. They should win that game. If they don't, then, we're having a really different conversation Tuesday night.
Yeah.
But they then need to carry it over against Michigan. The fight they showed yesterday, they got to connect that to playing better offensively. And as it is right now, when your mission is to outscore other people because you're not going to get a lot of stops, that's not the best way to cruise through a season. Because when the shot doesn't fall, you're going to have tough times. Look at Syracuse. Syracuse got all these shooters, right? And that's not the best 2-3 zone that they've had in the past. And what happened? They gave up 100 the other night to Colgate and lost. I'm not saying that this team will do that, but you can't. You've got to lock down and defend. You've got to box out. I didn't count a lot of box outs tonight, and I haven't counted a lot of box outs today again. They did more on Saturday against Purdue, but you can't base your level of juice and energy by playing a top 10 team. When I covered the 2000, I've covered a lot of national champions. I covered a couple of Duke national championship teams, and I covered all 3 of Roy's at Carolina. And all those teams had something in common where they, in November and December, especially when they were playing one of those Tuesday night 9:00 games from a directional hyphenated school, they had juice. Juice was who they were. It was their DNA. Well, this team needs to adopt that as a DNA. Because there were periods against Loyola and Brown and Charleston where they didn't have it. And they didn't have it for 5 minutes today. So there's a lot of things that need fixing. But the wonderful thing, if you're a North Carolina fan, is they got lots of parts. 5 games now, they've got a 20-point score in each game. If you're a Carolina fan, you got to say that's good to see Brady go off from 3 because he hadn't had a big 3-point game yet. So he's done that now. He's checked off that box. Leakey was out there playing. I thought, well, I'm not going to say he made a great difference because nobody really played very well defensively, but it's good for Carolina that Leakey's out there. People realized Saturday why he plays and why they need him on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And RJ and Caleb can be spectacular at times, and then sometimes they can look like last season, which is where it was the case tonight. So there's a ton of growth for this team moving forward, and I do think they're going to grow a lot, but they have got to get better defensively, Jacob.
Yeah,
and they got to do it fast.
Yeah.
They got to do it fast because they also, they go to Georgia Tech in 2 weeks.
That's not far away.
No, Georgia Tech beat Georgia the other night, beat them pretty convincingly, if I'm not mistaken. So that's on the road, and they've struggled in Atlanta a lot in recent years. So
no, absolutely,
they got to get better defensively. They'll practice tomorrow because they have the game Tuesday, but Tuesday should be about getting better defensively. If they hit 15 threes, big whoop. They got to get better defensively, and they got to start boxing out. They got to start owning the boards. If they do those two things, this team has a chance to be really good. But until they get better defensively, until they become North Carolina on the glass on a more regular basis, this team's going to have some issues.
Well said, AJ. Well said. Yeah, completely agree. Defense has to improve quickly, and it'll be tested here in a couple of weeks, especially against Michigan, which isn't, I know there's a week break in between it, but not too far away.
A week away.
Yep. Carolina losing 89-72 to 17th ranked Tennessee in the Hall of Fame tip-off. That's going to do it for us. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew James. Andrew, we'll let you run, man. I know you got plenty of work to bang out before you fly out tomorrow morning. So
very early tomorrow morning.
Yeah, very early tomorrow morning. And grind doesn't stop.
That's been my theme. That's been my consistency lately, right?
Early flights.
Late
nights and early flights. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That time of year, man. That time of year. But that'll do it for us.
We got football pressers at 11, so I got to be home ready for that.
Yeah, state week coming up. Big, last game for the regular season football. So for all your coverage after this one, leading up to the state game, leading up to the Asheville game, and post-Asheville game as well, keep it locked to TarHillIllustrated.com and, of course, our YouTube channel as well. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know every single time we upload, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.
Thanks.